As a sliver of midnight moonlight in 570 AD slanted across a fractured marble statue in Rome's Piazza Navona, the air was thick with the scent of damp earth and hay. Within a villa bedroom encased by heavy stone walls, its window frames loosened by time, an old man with hair as white as frost sat silently before a dying oil lamp. Though small in stature, he remained strikingly upright. He was not reviewing the ironclad heavy cavalry that once struck terror into the hearts of the Goths. Instead, upon a wrinkled sea map, he traced an arc called time, with a trembling yet precise gesture. At 97 years of age, he had witnessed nearly every moment of the Byzantine sun, from its dawn to its most scorching zenith. He was Narses, the Grand Chamberlain to Justinian the Great, the last god of war who, at 70 and as a eunuch, took up the mantle of command to conquer Italy. This is a chronicle of how restraint ignites power and how endurance is transmuted into glory. The genesis of Narses' life held none of the iron-blooded texture typical of a general. Rather, it was a somber hue woven of spices and silk within the cavernous corridors of the great palace of Constantinople. An Armenian by birth, castrated in his youth and sold into the imperial court, he inherited a microcosm that was ruthlessly cold, steeped in rigid hierarchy and prejudice. Behind tapestries reddened by candlelight, he learned to read the true temperature of power with a mere glance. He was youthful and frail, possessing an intellect that seemed discordant with his surroundings, seeking refuge in the quiet embrace of the library amidst scrolls of geometry, finance, and ancient philosophy. Over 40 years as a chamberlain, he calculated every gold coin of the empire from within Justinian's shadow. He understood that prosperity was a truth grown only from an ultimate reverence for order. While the empire's generals spilled blood upon the battlefield, this old man, guarding the lantern's glow, had already perceived the full cost of war through ledgers and dispatches. If his early obscurity was the slow sedimentation of wisdom, his appointment to command at the age of 70 was the practical crucible that pushed his aesthetic of leadership to its zenith. Justinian, his trust in the arrogant young noble commanders exhausted, handed the fate of Italy to this septuagenarian who had never led an army into fray. Carrying his abacus, his geometric notes, and a courtly uniform so immaculate it was unsettling, he mounted his horse amidst the cold rains of Ravenna. On the dawn of the Battle of Teligni, he stood at the highest vantage point of the field. Through a mercilessly precise calculation of terrain and enemy psychology, he issued the orders for retreat and counter-encirclement that would alter history. This style of command held no thunderous roars. Instead, it transmuted war into an intellectual gambit played upon a foundation of stone. In that hour, Narses was the most solitary and steadfast craftsman of the Mediterranean. Using silence to absorb every derisive mockery of his station, in the eyes of a general, the summit of power is the wholeness of the map. Yet, as Narses finally purged the Goths and returned Italy to the imperial fold, he realized that he had gained not only stability, but a sense of void born of witnessing the ebb and flow of civilizations. In a temporary headquarters in Rome, damp and smelling of mold, he observed that the once colossal and arrogant monuments of the city, under the erosion of time, possessed a silence more potent than any word. This transition from a will to conquer to a sentinel of ruins was an intellectual struggle that endowed him with a nearly transparent, chilling composure. He wrote in his journals, "I once believed I was repairing a world. Now I find that I am merely searching within the crevices of scarred marble for a point of convergence where the soul no longer falls." This expansive clarity became the most unyielding armor of his twilight years, allowing him to maintain a poise as effortless as flowing water in the face of suspicion and exile. The final days of Narses were spent in a state of profound solemnity and a silence illuminated by the radiance of a sage.
Around 570 AD, the fine Roman rain fell soundlessly, washing the stone balustrades of the Ponte Sant'Angelo into a translucent, somber gray.
By now, Narses' body had grown exceedingly light, his once broad general's cloak hanging loosely upon his fragile skeletal frame. In his last moments of clarity, he refused the summons to return to Constantinople, requesting instead that his attendants carry him to the terrace to listen to the final cadence of the Tiber. He closed his eyes, and with those hands that had grasped 10,000 levers of power and felt the texture of 10,000 ancient volumes, he traced one last, minuscule arc of restraint upon his knees. The currents of the Tiber carried away the last sigh of this legendary general, marking the official close of the era known as Justinian's Light, within the classical world. Even today, the name of Narses remains the sole sanctuary for many a restless seeker in the dead of night. When one looks upon the famous mosaics of San Vitale in Ravenna and sees the melancholic yet profound figure of the eunuch standing beside the emperor, it is as if one can still feel an old man whispering to the marble in the damp nights of Western Europe. He left behind no triumphal columns piercing the heavens, but a spiritual template of self-restraint. He teaches us that even if the entire world besieges you with prejudice, the order within your heart remains governed by your own perception of truth. He was one of the few in history who truly transcended the biases of gender and status, maintaining absolute lucidity amidst absolute shadow. His life was a sapient odyssey, seeking the sacred rhythm within a convoluted world. The saga of Narses thus draws to a slow close amidst the fading dusk of Rome. He was never an opportunist who bartered for fame, he was merely a weary soul who steadfastly refused to compromise with mediocrity. He reminds us that no matter how mundane your life may be, or how deep your distress, inner tranquility is your sole and eternal sanctuary. Just as he sat through the coldest Roman winter nights, clutching a guttering candle to find a fulcrum for existence through his pen. Perhaps you, too, are navigating the uncertainties of life at this moment. But believe this, in every life, there exists a silent season, a private space for dialogue with the self. May the serenity and vastness of Narses become the softest feather in your dreams, carrying you toward that most peaceful and expansive shore of the inner soul.
Good night.